Missouri's own version of a heartbeat bill is now on its way to the State House. This is after Senate Republicans passed House Bill 126, also known as the, quote, Missouri Stands for the Unborn Act. You see there their reaction, a tweet sent out earlier today, quote, history made. It is similar to Georgia's bill. Missouri's version, though, would effectively ban abortions once a fetal heartbeat is detected, and the only exception would be in the case of medical emergency. Places like Georgia did have exceptions for rape or incest. Missouri's does not. Governor Mike Parson says that he's ready to sign it if it makes it to his desk. Alabama's law has just been signed by the governor, and it goes one step further. It will become the most restrictive abortion law in the country when it goes into effect in 6 months. Governor Kay Ivey says the Human Life Protection Act is a powerful testament to what people in Alabama deeply held as a belief, that every life is precious. But staunch conservative and televangelist Pat Robertson says this bill has gone too far. Listen.
It's an extreme law, and they want to challenge Roe versus Wade, but my humble view is that this is not the case we want to bring to the Supreme Court, because I think this one will lose.
All of the bill's 25 yay votes were from Republican men. No female senator voted in favor of this. And beyond the political ramification, abortion laws have deep impacts on real people. People like Shannon Dingle. She was only 12 years old, a 6th grader about to go into the 7th grade when she became pregnant. That's after she was raped repeatedly by her own family members. I want you to hear some of her account. It's from a recent USA Today op-ed. I want to warn you, you may find some of these details quite disturbing. Here's what Shannon writes.
I remember when Becky from Full House had been sick and pregnant with their twins. I did the math. Then I walked 1.5 miles to the store, lied to the clerk about needing to get one for my mom, stuck the bag in my fanny pack, and began the walk home. I never chose to have sex at such a young age, but abusers in my family chose to rape me. I had lost count of the number of times by then. With a dad high-ranking in the county sheriff's office, I didn't trust going to police. I'd tried to tell teachers and church volunteers, but that never went anywhere either. I need you to know that any child's pregnancy is the result of rape, because no child can consent to sex. I need you to know that any child's pregnancy is traumatic, no matter the outcome, because little girls aren't supposed to have full wombs. I need you to know that I didn't know I had options, because I knew girls who got pregnant were called sluts, and girls who had abortions were called murderers.
Shannon Dingle joins me now to share more of her story. Shannon, I can imagine it's difficult to hear that as it was for us to read it. Take me back to that day when you found out you were pregnant, 6th grade, going into 7th.
Yeah, at that point, I didn't know much different. Now, looking back and being the mother of 2 12-year-old girls, my heart breaks more than it did then. Then I was just trying to survive. And so I was figuring things out, and it felt simple, logical. I was kind of numb to a lot of feelings at that point, to just go ahead, get the test, figure things out, and then hope that that might be an avenue for people to eventually help me.
And, you know, you tried to tell people. What did they say to you?
Yeah. So my parents were incredibly influential in our community and well-trusted. PTA president, major in the sheriff's department. And so the assumption was, okay, maybe something's going on, but her parents are great people, so they will handle it. And that was consistently what happened.
And you see these bills.
Well, not them handling it.
Right. You see these bills, Alabama, Missouri, other states like Ohio, no exceptions for cases like yours, not just rape, but incest. There is an exception for the life of the mother, and you talk about in this op-ed why your life at 12 was in danger.
Yeah, the reality is, with the life of a mother being discussed, which is not really what is included when the governor says all lives need to be protected. When the life of a 12-year-old is I was a slender kid. I looked like I hadn't hit puberty, and my body was not made to carry a baby at that point. I'm sure that's part of why I ultimately miscarried. But we aren't being nuanced and personal enough in these conversations and in recent legislation to allow for us to acknowledge all of the different aspects of what my life was and how my body was not made for that.
And you are a mother of 6, as you say, 2 girls. What do you say to them about these bills?
So most of my kids are young enough that we're not having too many conversations about them. I have a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, and 2 10-year-olds who are kind of oblivious. But my middle schoolers, 2 12-year-old girls, are interested in figuring out kind of where they stand on abortion and asking great questions. And they, I think they get the nuance and the individuality of decisions better than most lawmakers do right now.
And how would things have been different for you if you raised your little baby, who you named Hope, at 12 years old?
You know, I think that there was still a possibility with the influence my parents had that things would have been covered up and that she might have been raised in the same home that I was. And that's not a life that I would want for any child. So I think that it would have been disastrous for both her and for me going through. I knew I was pregnant at the beginning of 7th grade, but nobody else knew I was pregnant, and I didn't have to deal with all of the cultural, school-based shaming things that often happen to young girls.
So what would you say to these lawmakers if you could?
I would stress and beg them even to look at people, to listen to stories. Right now, there's a lot of political posturing. There's a lot of strategizing to get the Supreme Court to pick up Roe v. Wade. And I don't think there's a lot of humanizing in the entire discussion. And so I want them to think about, hey, if we're sitting down across from each other with a cup of coffee, would you respond the same way that you're responding, you're voting after hearing my story? Would you listen to me? Or because I think at essence, most people can be compassionate and empathetic and good, but we have to remember that any political issue is a personal one.
And real quick, what do you say to those people that say this is one story, this is an exception, and it's an extreme exception? What do you say to them?
I know many other women who have been in exception situations. It's because such exceptions exist that that legislators shouldn't be the ones making the decisions. Because really restrictive laws, they put every person who even would be acknowledged by the pro-life movement as an exception, they put them in danger because their laws don't allow for those exceptions.
Shannon Dingle, thank you so much for being with me. We appreciate it. I know it can't be easy to talk about this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And if you want my take, here's the simple truth. Abortion has been a third rail issue since the 1800s, when states began passing laws to make them illegal. And let me be clear, this polarizing issue is not going to be solved by any one person's opinion for or against these laws. That's not what this is about. It's about what lawmakers in Alabama have clarified, that the life of an unborn child is paramount above any exceptions like rape or incest or even a heartbeat. And many agree the value of life should be paramount. Putting that all aside, now that you're on record, there's some important work to be done for the children who have been born in your state. In Alabama, more than a quarter of your children live in poverty. Your state ranks last in education for these children. 7 babies die for every 1,000 born in your state. Your infant mortality rate is the 4th worst in the nation. It's also been named the second worst state in the entire country, and that's because of mediocre health care, struggling economy, and public safety issues. And please, Alabama lawmakers, reach out to Courtney Andrews. She is now 20. She was raped at 14 and again at 18. Her convicted rapist, Austin Smith Clem, was sentenced to no prison time in Alabama. Had her rapist impregnated her, she would be forced to have his baby. And if a doctor performed that abortion, that doctor could be sentenced to 99 years in prison. Here's one thing those for and against abortion might be able to agree on. If the protection of an unborn life is this important, then shouldn't there also be a moral obligation to help protect those children who have been born? If so, there is a lot more work to be done. And that's the simple truth.